Hello chess fans, how are you doing? I hope you're feeling healthy and well. If you want to play correct chess and win in style, you have to be using some strategical principles to be basing your play on, but apply them with tactical means, as we'll be doing today. So these strategical principles are the following. So the first principle, really important in any chess position, is king safety, and here we can see that the black king on g8 has no defenders close by except for the knight, but the attack is happening on a light square and bishop takes h7 leads to a quick win for white after queen h5. The second principle to take into account when judging a position is material, and here we can see that white is up material, he has up a piece, so he's winning due to the activation of this material, which will be outnumbering the opponent. Another really important factor, which usually determines the course of games, who wins and who loses, is the initiative. Who is able to be making the first attack to be delivering mate, as we all know mate cannot be equalized later. So here it is black to play, and he is playing with the initiative and sacrificing a whole rook after queen c7, with the idea being that queen takes a8 is answered by bishop f5, attacking this queen through the rook and also attacking mate. So queen takes f8, king takes f8, and rook d2 is forced for white in order not to lose immediately, and black is better because he took the initiative even by sacrificing a whole rook. Our next principle is all about the quality of pieces, including their mobility, their stability, and their positioning. Here we can see that white's light pieces are not being kicked away by black's pawns, thanks to their white pawns being present and being able to capture the black's pawn's advance, and also their positioning is centralized, and their mobility is enough to be exerting pressure on the black side, whereas black's pawns and pieces are passive and cramped, so of lesser value than white's. A crucial factor when judging a position strategically is the presence of a line, a file, a rank, or a diagonal important to the course of the game, such as here after knight e5, this diagonal, h4, e1 diagonal, is so important that the queen entering there gives a check and now is threatening the king and changing the course of the game. One should also take into account the importance of the integrity and the mobility of the pawn structure, and say here, for example, after knight takes e6, b takes e6, the creation of doubled c pawns by black is restricting the potential for him to be creating the passed pawn in the endgame, and also he is giving targets for white to be focusing on in the middle game. Space is nothing to sneeze at either in chess, because the side with more of it is able to move his pieces freely inside it, while the side lacking it is able to move his pieces in a restricted way, feeling cramped. Another element we usually have in mind when trying to judge a position is the presence of the two bishops for each side. Here white is giving up the two bishops in order to damage black's pawn structure, so this is the two bishops advantage being exchanged for something else. The last principle we are discussing is the unprotected pieces and pawns. Here white is able to create a fork after f takes e5, queen h5 check, threatening both the king and the e5 pawn, and g6 leading only to further exploitation of the weaknesses created of the unprotected rook on h8 and the king as well. And now let's put this criteria into action, into practice, by taking an example from the classical variation of the Ruy Lopez, starting after e4, e5, knight f3 attacking the pawn, knight c6 defending it, bishop b5 and bishop c5. Here you have white to play, and you should be, according to the principles above, be thinking of what to play in 5 seconds video time. You actually have as much time as you like. Please press the pause button now, and the countdown is starting. Okay, so let's examine first d3. d3 has the advantage that it is helping white develop, it opens ways for the queen and the bishop to move freely, but it is not making any threats, therefore not contributing to the initiative of whites. So black can punish white for his quiet play and play aggressively himself, attacking the bishop with a6, and after bishop a4, have the time offered to him by white to solidify his central pawn by d6, not caring about the pin on this diagonal, which seems to be affecting his king's safety, and say after d4, he has e takes d4 and knight takes d4, although seeming to be attacking the knight a second time. Now black can be ambitious and play queen f6, attacking this knight a second time. This knight is not attacking it actually, but if he takes here, then queen takes f2 is mate. Therefore, white should play something like bishop takes c6. If he plays bishop e3, then b5 is almost winning for black. Say after knight takes e6, bishop takes e3, creating a stronger threat against f2 again with a mate threat. So f takes e3 and the queen can go to h4 to provoke the weakness of g3, after which this diagonal, the h1a diagonal, will be opened and a triple fork will be happening with these two pieces and the unprotected bishop on a4 as well. So black is winning. In this position, let's check now bishop takes c6. After bishop takes c6, giving up the two bishops for white, so we can deduct a point from him, black can take either with the b pawn or the d pawn. In either case, doubling his own pawns, so a plus point for white. He has managed to damage his opponent's pawn structure. After d takes c6, however, which is the correct move, knight takes c5 is not a good move, so no points for material, because it allows the queen's entrance to d4, centralizing the queen, increasing its mobility and its quality, and attacking the unprotected now knight on e5 and the unprotected pawn on f2, again with a mate threat. So queen d4 forces knight d3 to protect both the knight and the f2 mate threat, but queen takes e4 regains the material, queen e2, and after queen takes e2, king takes e2, black has managed to harass the development of white's, the harmony is lost, and so now he only has to save the bishop, which was attacked on c5, plays bishop d4, retaining it active, and c3, bishop f6, and now the natural knight f4 with the idea d4, and later develop the queen side, fails to g5, attacking the knight. Knight h5 is a blunder because bishop g4 forks the unprotected king and the unprotected knight. So we can see that practically and objectively black is better, and how much better will be depending on white's accuracy in a difficult position. Now let's examine castles. Short castles is a very good move because it promotes king safety, the king now being castled and safe in his short castle position, and is also helping develop the white pieces, especially the rook, to go to the e-file and control the half-open e-file. It also keeps in mind that the initiative can be postponed for a move and doesn't commit any pawn moves, any tempi on the c or d pawns, and he can play d4 at once later. So after castles, black can play knight f6 attacking, but here white has the initiative from a move before in his mind and plays the very nice looking knight takes e5 with the idea that after knight takes e5 he can fork those two pieces with d4, the knight and the bishop, so he'll be regaining the piece and be developing with the tempo and also having the initiative because he's attacking. Now it is up to you to find black's best defense in this position, which is a difficult move in my opinion, and you have 5 seconds video time for that. Press the pause button at your place and think for as much as you like. So the correct move, a very strange move before having seen the logic behind it, is c6. The idea is that since black will be losing a piece either way, he should invest a move to have some initiative down the line. So after c6, if white now captures correctly towards e5 to be attacking the other knight as well and be going on with the initiative, then knight takes e4 and queen g4, which is forking these two unprotected pieces and pawns, is actually only illusionary because after c takes b5, white is down a piece and he has to take on e4, so the g7 attack was only an illusion. Queen takes e4 and castles and black is okay. It's a tiny bit worse, but his disadvantage is within limits. To further clarify and illustrate our point, we can play another move for black in this position, say bishop e7, preserving the bishop, but this is not good since after d takes e5, knight takes e4, and queen g4. This time the queen is really attacking the knight and the pawn. He has no threat looming on his bishop, so knight c5 and queen takes g7, and black is down material, he's down a pawn, and is also under heavy attack by white, so he's losing. And after, instead of bishop e7 or the correct c6, he plays knight takes c4. Here is a question for you. What would you capture? Would you capture the bishop on c5 or the knight on e5, and why? Please think. The correct answer is capture the bishop, but not because we prefer the bishop or because this is an open position and the bishop usually works better. No, the reason is that these two pieces, the knights, are hanging. So after d takes c5 and a6 attacking the bishop itself, queen d5 takes e4, queen e7, and now knight c3. Knight c3 is threatening to go to d5 and be threatening a fork here. So it is rendering queen e6 impossible due to knight takes e7 check, triple fork between the rook, the queen, and the king. So c6 may be forced, after which rook e1, f6, and now the queen is making some room for the knight to move to the weakened square which white's play, thanks to his initiative, has created. He has created a hole, a strong square, an important square for the knight to enter and really positionally win the game. So this is what good play does to your opponent. He, if not able to show some resistance, will be forced to make more weaknesses. After knight takes e4, what's different about this position compared to the previous one is that d takes e5 is only leaving the knight hanging, the bishop is depending on the knight to be safe. So if castles by black and queen d5 attacking the knight and hoping that it will move and the bishop will be taken, then queen h4 is sufficient to defend, because after g3 the counter-attacking c6 makes the queen move or capture on c5, after which this is a draw, knight takes c5, g takes h4, and c takes b5, and black is holding his own. Instead, if white plays queen d3 with the idea to keep this knight in check, then there is knight takes f2 and white is losing. After rook takes f2, bishop takes f2 check, king takes f2, queen takes h2 check, and if we see the king is being attacked, the bishop is also being attacked, it is about to fall in the next move, and white is under pressure as far as material is concerned and the initiative, so he is losing. And now let's examine the best move for white in this position, which is to play c3, and it is best because it is helping advance the pawn structure of white's, giving it some mobility to be attacking black's center on e5, giving some initiative against black's bishop on c5, and also helping develop the queen on the d file and the bishop on this diagonal, as well as giving the queen access to a4, which can be important in some variations. Now black can play something along the lines of d6, f5 or knight f6. Please choose the right continuation based on the principles described above. Starting the countdown. Let's see, d6 is not very good because although it helps develop the bishop, it doesn't attack anything, and furthermore it reduces the king's safety on this diagonal, helping now white's bishop pin the knight on c6. So d4 comes with strength, and after takes, bishop b6, d5, and the knight is pinned, so a6 doesn't do anything because after bishop a4 the b pawn is blocked, so the pin can't be broken. Also, if bishop b4, trying to save the bishop and the knight this way, now you have to think for white, what would you play here? Starting the countdown. To play correctly in this move for white, you have to realize that the bishop here is only attacking for one move. Otherwise it is a liability for black, a bishop that can't be protected easily or has no purpose. So the right move is king f1, after which black can try to break the pin by bishop d7, but here there is a very fine move for white, which is queen a4, pressuring the bishop, which was protected by the knight. So after knight e7, d5, the protector of this bishop is kicked away and the bishop is lost. Also, after a5, a3 is trapping the bishop. Bishop a5 leads to bishop takes c6, bishop takes c6, queen takes a5. And if black foresees all of that, and instead of bishop d7 plays now d5, then queen b3, is threatening to take the bishop immediately because this knight is not doing anything for its protection. So maybe he plays d takes e4, but knight e5 is threatening mate here as well as the knight and the bishop at once to be taken. So bishop e6, queen takes b4. Otherwise, knight e7, again taking the bishop, or bishop a5, e takes d5, attacking the knight, a6, takes, takes, forking, takes and takes, forking the king unprotected and the bishop, which is unprotected as well. So white is winning. The same thing would happen after bishop here, e takes d5, a6, takes, forced and takes, and white is winning. So no d6 for black. What about f5? Well, f5 gives some initiative to black, attacking the central pawn, but it doesn't develop a piece, and it is also compromising the king's future safety on this diagonal because it is opening this diagonal wide open, so the king here will be subject to a check from the queen b3 or the bishop c4 in the future. So it is kind of controversial as a move, and white can respond in an orthodox way to f5 because a flank attack is usually best answered with a center attack, and d4 is the move, after which black can choose between f takes e4 and now takes on c6, so here would be just leading to the bishop taking back, and after takes on c6, knight takes e5, this bishop is attacked, so bishop d6, and now queen h5 by white, g6 by black in order not to lose the castling rights, and here it is your move to decide what to play. This was rather a tricky question by me. I was hoping that you would not fall for knight takes g6, which is not easy to do because now knight f6, queen h4 and rook g8 leaves black better. After knight f4, he's even winning with rook g4, queen here to protect the knight, but bishop f8 and the queen can only retreat to h3, entering involuntarily but forcefully the bishop's x-ray attack, and after takes on f4, he can't retake because this diagonal is now opened and the queen has been attacked. So best after the knight is attacked should be to play knight e5 when black has the amazing bishop takes e5, d takes e5 and the double exclam queen d3. And now should white play queen takes f6, then he is in for a nasty surprise after bishop g4 threatening mate along with the queen on e2. So f3 is forced and e takes f3, g takes f3, and now what would you play for black? Would you take on f3? Please think. Well, the correct move is rook f8, and after queen h6, rook takes f3, threatening a check and mate. Because say we capture instead of rook f8 on f3, now queen e6 is even losing for black. After king f8, bishop h6 check, rook g7 forced, takes with check, takes, check, and whatever black plays, say to h8, this is mate, or here, this is mate as well. If after queen e6 he goes to d8, then check, king here, bishop g5, king d7, queen f7, check, and mate. So black should be really careful even on this move when he's so close to winning. After g6, white should play queen e2. And bishop f5, bishop f4, knight f6. Now here the knight is attacking the pawn. Queen e7, f3, and if knight h5, bishop h6. And now the g4 pawn is threatened to fork these two pieces. So takes, and white is better due to the coming fork. Instead of f takes e4, black can of course play e takes d4, but now e5 comes with the advance of the e5 pawn and hindering the opponent's knight to go to f6, and it also mobilizes the central pawn of white, so the pawn structure is becoming more aggressive for white and is restricting black's piece mobility. And now knight e7 instead can be met by c takes d4, attacking this bishop. If it moves here to give a check, knight c3, castles, queen b3 check, king h8, d5, threatening to take the bishop, but bishop takes c3 first, b takes c3 and knight a5, attacking the queen in turn. So queen b4, targeting the two knights, c6 counter-attacking, but bishop g5 counter-attacking as well, with also a future attack to the rook. So rook e8, d6, further reinforcing the pin, c takes b5, bishop takes e7, queen b6. And now the queen moves to the other side because the king has been deprived of any close by pieces to protect him, so king safety is a major factor here. h6, trying to stop the knight g5 idea that was being threatened to deliver mate to h7, and now as white you should be deciding what to play, starting the countdown now. And the correct move is the amazing bishop f6, and now queen takes h6 check is threatened, and this move is not possible due to this pin or this diagonal. So a move after bishop f6 can be king g8, but queen g3 reinforces the pin, and now this is practically over. While after takes with check, king g8, queen g6 check, king f8, queen takes f6 check, king g8, and now the knight comes with devastating effect, threatening to go here, and this is mate, so black is resigning. So the best move here for black is to play knight f6, not compromising his king safety in the future, but also developing a piece and attacking the e4 pawn, gaining some initiative, and white should best now to castle, because if he plays d4, this can be played, but not with the idea that after e takes d4 he will play c takes d4, because this is giving black some time to give a check and free his position a bit, his cramped position. Instead, he should sacrifice the pawn and play e5, attacking the knight and gaining some initiative himself. Instead of all of this, white can of course begin with castles, when after knight takes e4, what would you play here for white? Starting the countdown again. The correct move is of course queen e2. Now knight d6 is a blunder for black because bishop takes e6, d takes e6, and this bishop and this king are unprotected and both exploited at once with queen takes e5 attacking here and here, so the bishop is falling. While after knight f6, d4 comes with strength, taking advantage of the pinned pawn, and this bishop is being attacked while not being able to answer in an active way, but has to retreat here, after which takes and knight d5, rook d1, white is much better. So we begin with castles, and black castles in his turn, and now d4. d4 now can be met either by bishop b6, bishop d6, or bishop e7, or e takes d4. What would you play, please, and why? Bishop e7 leads to white advancing the d5 pawn, gaining more space, and the pawn majority marches forward, restricting the knight, going back to b8, and the bishop now returns to not be locked out of the pawn chain after he plays c4, and also be defending the a4 pawn that was being attacked. So here d6, c4, bishop g4, h3, and this is a position we won't be getting into too much detail because it is about the closed game, a lesson for another time maybe. But white is the only one playing for the win here because he has more space and his pieces can move freely, while black is looking to break open the position somehow to give some breathing room to his pieces, which are bumping into each other. Bishop d6 is of course a blunder because now the defender is being removed. Bishop takes e6, d takes e6, and the e5 pawn is forking these two pieces, and one of them is falling and white is winning. E takes d4 is giving up the center for black, and after e5 now white has the initiative and the pawns march forward here and takes, and white is much better. Maybe bishop b6, bishop c4, knight here, bishop g5, h6, bishop takes d5, h takes g5, and now what would you play as white? White has the fantastic knight takes g5, and after knight takes d5, queen h5 is made for white, except if black gives up his queen on g5. Otherwise, rook here, check, 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 mate. And this is the correct move here for black. White would like to take on e5, but his e4 pawn is falling, so he plays bishop g5 first to pin the knight. d6 by black, and now would you capture on c6 for white and after takes to take on e5 or not? Please think. The correct answer is that you shouldn't do that, because after bishop takes e6, b takes e6 and d takes e5, d takes e5, now you have a couple of options. You can play first knight takes e5 and lose the game. How? You're losing the game after bishop takes f2, double exclam, rook takes f2 is leading to queen takes d1 check, while after king takes f2, knight takes e4 is forking the bishop and the king. So in order to initiate this operation, white should first be exchanging queens, after which rook takes d8, and now if he plays knight takes e5, threatening here, then bishop a6, attacking the rook, and knight takes e6, bishop takes f1, knight takes d8, bishop b5, an exclamation point move. If a4, rook takes d8, and white has no time to capture the bishop. So instead, knight a3, bishop d7, knight b7, bishop c6 is trapping the knight. So this idea is good for white, but not executed in the right way, because the bishop from c8 is activated on these diagonals. So white to play should begin his operation with that in mind and restrict the future activation of the bishop by playing a4, and this has the idea to take on c6 and play a5 as well to trap the bishop. So if a6, then the plan of this bishop's restriction of activation is achieved, and bishop takes e6 now is good. B takes e6, d takes e5, d takes e5, queen takes d8, rook takes d8, and knight takes e5, and black has no counterplay due to this bishop not being able to go to a6 as before. While after a4, a5, if now bishop takes e6, b takes e6, d takes e5, d takes e5, queen takes d8, rook takes d8, knight takes e5, this bishop can move to a6, but fortunately for white, his a4 pawn is not allowing the bishop to return to b5 after takes, and bishop f1, knight takes d8, he can't play the bishop b5 to d7 or to c6 move to trap the knight. So this position is drawn. But white can play for much more than a draw here, if only he realizes that his real asset is the presence of queens, while black's queen is only restricted to passively defending the knight, because were she to move somewhere on a light square, then bishop takes f6 would only lead to the damaging of black's kingside castle structure. So he'd better do something to avoid, after the exchange of the d pawns and the opening of the d line in advance, the exchange of queens, and this move is queen c1. Wow. Having in mind that after h6, bishop h4, g5 is not a good move due to knight takes g5, h takes g5, and queen takes g5 takes the pawn back with check and gaining back the piece with interest. And instead, if black plays now e takes d4, then bishop takes c6 is necessary for the d pawn to stay alive, and this will support the advance of the e5 pawn to further attack the pinned piece on f6. So black's position is very difficult. I hope that you enjoyed today's lesson about how to think strategically and apply it in a dynamic, tactical way. So if you did, please subscribe to my channel, and for further content, till next time, stay tuned.